Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we are going to talk about Venus's conjunction with Mars. At long last, after Mars ran through the T square with Saturn and Uranus, and then Venus ran through the T square with Saturn and Uranus, and then Venus was enclosed between the malefics, Saturn and Mars. Finally, Venus is passing through all of this, coming together with Mars, breaking the enclosure, and bringing something of a resolution or a state of harmony. That even the feeling of um, kind of a new chapter. Especially this dates back really to the month of June. In June, we had an intense Mercury retrograde. We had an eclipse. We had Saturn square Uranus, and then right after that, Mars went straight away into Leo in mid-June, started applying into the T square. Venus follows suit, goes right into the T square. Finally, Saturn and Uranus are starting to separate. We're also seeing just things are toning down overall astrologically. Saturn, Uranus separating, especially. And then after the T squares from both Venus and Mars, they're coming together at last. So let's take a look at this in the real time clock. And I'm just going to give you a few thoughts about this one to start your week. So here is the conjunction at about 19 degrees of Leo. That conjunction is happening here in the early stages of our new lunation cycle as well, which means that our lunation cycle is about, I would call it a breakthrough. You can also tell that there's a breakthrough on the horizon, and that things are starting to synthesize. We're starting to that it's almost like the rain is ready to pour down, and there's relief on its way. You can see that also because the sun is going to oppose Pluto. So the little bit of the intensity and depth, and one last push here between now and, say, around July 23rd or 4th as the full moon comes through. But this is a really good sign at the beginning of our cycle here that we see, at the outset of the cycle, that we're seeing Venus and Mars come together at last and breaking the enclosure. So remember the enclosure, in case you're forgetting what that is. We see the enclosure. If I just back this up a few days, you can see here, for example, that Saturn shoots its ray to 11 Leo, and then the other malefic, Mars, is trapping Venus on the other side. So when the rays or bodies of the malefics sort of sandwich another planet by degree or by body in the same sign, then that's called a malefic enclosure. So I did a video about this at the end of last week. And this is what's being broken open at the very early outset of this lunar cycle. Now, that might sound like, oh, well, there's no more drama to come. There's always drama. So, no shortage of that in the material world. The sun will oppose Pluto, but the fact that we have this union of Mars and Venus at the outset of a cycle, that it's followed by a sun opposite Pluto dynamic in the upcoming weeks, to me, that suggests a major breakthrough and harmony and synthesis as two very possible or likely outcomes. Now, that doesn't mean that every last thing about Venus and Mars's conjunction is positive. Of course, there are challenges with this transit, just like there are with every other transit. We'll try to cover some of those today. But I do believe that this overall, to me, when I was doing my, looking at all of the months of 2021, which I do every year when I do my Kickstarter campaign, I was circling this as a moment of relief, a moment of having exhausted a certain kind of stress and dynamic tension, and finally starting to turn the chapter from it, dating back to, say, late May into June during eclipse season in particular, and the Saturn-Uranus dynamic in June. So, okay, just so you have a picture of it, the actual conjunction happens on Monday, July 12th into Tuesday, July 13th. So Monday into Tuesday, the 12th and 13th of July. Then following right after that, we get by July 17th, the big breakthrough from the sun opposite Pluto. And then at that point, we're almost heading into the full moon. A few more days away, we get to, say, the 22nd. the 23rd, and then we're hitting the full moon, and the moon is passing through Pluto right as it's full, right before it's full. So kind of a feeling of catharsis. Everyone always says about Pluto, it's death and rebirth, but just think of the word transfiguration, not just transformation, but a transfiguration, a feeling of something being, deep energies that are being brought up and released, and they're life-giving, and they purge and cleanse and heal, even if it's a little painful in the process. So whatever that union between Venus and Mars is signifying, it has this very explosive healing power. It's very transformative and cathartic coming behind it up until the full moon. And I even though people get freaked out by Pluto, I think this is genuinely good. I think that these are going to be the kinds of things where, as they're happening, you go, oh yeah, this needed to happen. And the feeling of, again, of relief that I really have a sense of with this one. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to share with you some things about Venus and Mars from my favorite desk side reference, The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. This is literally, like, to me, this is one of my favorite desk references. I always go to it for inspiration when I feel a little stuck. It's not just like a cookbook. It's really an archetypal combination guide. And it's not meant to give you exactly, in my opinion, not meant to give you exactly the answers to everything. It's meant to help you start the wheels turning. If your wheels in here start turning, just like the wheels of the heavens start turning, you start coming up with some good stuff and starting to understand the transits better. Okay, so Venus, Mars. Here's what he says are the main principles: a passionate enthusiasm for life. So I'm going to break down how he's getting these things. The passionate enthusiasm is going to be Mars combining with the joy for life itself, or for living. So sort of joyful, passionate living. It's a little bit like Carpe Diem, Venus, Mars. Emotional warmth and vitality. So you're talking about not just Venus alone is pleasant and pleasing and harmonious and beautiful, but when it's energized by Mars, it becomes warm and vital, and it has more of an action orientation behind it. Dynamic cravings for fun and enjoyment. So fun and enjoyment being Venus topics. Venus rejoices in the fifth house traditionally, which was a place of pleasure and enjoyment, but the dynamic craving, that's Mars. Harmonious self-assertion. So you've got the idea of asserting your will, but having it match easily and dance easily with others. That's very Venus, Mars. The interplay of love and anger in one's relationship life. People in my mind who, the best couples that I've ever seen in my life are those who seem to have a good sense of humor about one another's anger. It's like I've dealt with, and I've gone ballroom dancing with your anger many times before, and you with mine. And when that's present in a relationship, isn't it just the best? Because it turns from a battle of the wills, which will still happen, but it turns from battle of the wills into almost the ability to, like, aesthetically appreciate, one another, which, I just don't, that's just not it. So many times what I hear from people is the way that anger tears a relationship apart. But when there's love and anger in a kind of harmonious dance, people who fight well live long together. You know what I mean? Issues around selfish gratification. That can be, the selfishness can be Mars energizing Venus. Though it's not like Venus alone can't be selfish, but sometimes you'll feel that extra push toward something very self-centered, especially in the sign of Leo. Emotional discord and disharmony. Mars can sabotage Venus, and that can be a part of the dynamic. But so it can go back or forth. When they're in a conjunction with one another, sometimes you'll find elements of both playing out at the same time, weirdly enough. Rough and coarse manners. So, like, if you are someone who, like Venus is like, Venus knows how to please people, but Mars may be more like your, I don't know if you've ever gone out, like to, back in the day, I remember I used to work at a bar, and after work we would drink together. This was in my early 20s when I had some problems with drinking, in fact. And there were people who were just grosser and ruder than, like, others. And I found them, like, totally endearing to be with but for only for stretches of time. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't, it's like I had to go home and be civilized afterward or something like that. But yeah, that's the gist of it. So um rough and coarse manners can be a Venus Mars theme. He writes about characters and themes in all of his entries, which I think are really fun. He says a hearty and sociable nature, cravings for fun and enjoyment, harmonious forms of self-assertion, interplay of yin and yang energies, a balance between feelings of individuality and togetherness. Um, Hot-blooded urges for erotic gratification and consummation, feelings of lust and pleasure, impulses to both give and receive sexually, loving madly, tickling, the sports of love, the bold and the beautiful, dynamic music and parties, a love of dance. So shadow qualities, the interplay of love and anger, ongoing jealousy and possessiveness, emotional disharmony and discord, relationship instability and enjoyment of conflict, the sharp edge of love, love quarrels. He has a quote from Katharine Hepburn, who it's just funny that she was just on my mind the other day because I was looking at Humphrey Bogart movies, and I was remembering when I was a kid, my mom used to love this movie called The African Queen. And it was a boat. The movie is named after a boat that Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn are on together in that movie. Anyway, marriage is a series of desperate arguments people feel passionately about. Like, isn't that such a good such a good definition of, gosh, that's such a good definition of marriage on some level, because it's like two people who are going to clearly, because people are going to have agreements and disagreements about all kinds of things, and the way that plays out over the lifetime together. It's like a workshop in, and ultimately the way that you can bring one another over to each other's perspective through long standing debates and arguments about things. I find that really interesting. Um, yeah. One thing that I think is another interesting piece of this would be the lack of consideration towards others and only the desire to please oneself. He mentions that at length here. He has parts where he talks about the arts, archetypes and spirituality. He mentions Aphrodite and Ares, Shakti and Shiva, an archetypal figure with both sexes in one body. So Krishna's erotic adventures with the gopis or milkmaids. Yeah, then he goes on to talk about common ways that Venus and Mars will show up in dreams and so forth. It's a great book. Check it out, The Archetypal Universe. I blurbed the book at the beginning. In fact, it was a real pleasure to be part of his collection of quotes, because when he sent me the book before it was being published, I was like, this is badass. Like, this is a great book. And I've been recommending it for years. Anyway, generally speaking, one of the things that I would be aware of positively here is for differing needs that are very individual in nature. I want this, you want that. For those very individualistic needs to be more easily harmonized. And to me, that's really what is at the heart of this when I say that I think it's such a positive transit. Look, we've been going through, since June, we've been going through Saturn-Uranus. And Saturn-Uranus square has so much to do with trying to create breakthroughs, trying to move past old ways of being, trying to get beyond Saturn saying, no, wait, let's come back and be serious, or let me offer a limitation, or let me maybe make you slow down and do things more maturely. And then once Mars got in about mid-June, right after the eclipse, started getting in on the T-square, it was like, Mars in Leo, I'm doing this. It's about me. It's about my needs. It's about asserting something. And hitting Saturn, it could become more willful and strident and like coarse. And hitting Uranus, it can be more provocative and rebellious. And then Venus has to go through all of this. And Venus is the one trying to figure out how to please and harmonize. So how do we harmonize our will in this complex of Saturn and Uranus? How do we harmonize our will with all of these complex energies? And different people in our lives, different places or environments in our lives. It's like not easy. when Venus pushes through all of this and conjoins Mars, that's why I get this feeling of like the highest potential. Now, we've outlined some of the difficult ones too, but the highest potential here being the potential for differing needs to come together in unity. Remember, new moon in Cancer, which tends to be good as well, like Venus. Remember, the moon is exalted in one of Venus's signs. So, like Venus, the moon tends to be good at bringing things together like a web weaver. Sun, moon, Cancer, new moon. Right afterwards, we get the Mars Venus conjunction. Now, we might realize what we have to do, like what is being asked of us, or we might start realizing the harmony that is there to be made, and that alone can be a huge relief. But the work of actually making the harmony happen, that there's going to be a little bit of there's going to be some intensity behind that because the sun has to go through the opposition with Pluto. And so looking at what is necessary, what are the mature, sometimes difficult, sobering steps that I have to take to get where I want to go for the sake of this deeper harmony that I've been seeking, that's probably been pretty hard fought for like a month now. That'll take place between now and say July 23rd and 4th. So these are the things to watch for. We'll be back to revisit the sun opposite Pluto, make sure we're following up with that. I highly recommend that you go back to the first of the month video that I did for not only the monthly overview for the month, but specifically the horoscopes. If you go back to this month's horoscopes at the beginning and re-listen to what I said about Venus and Mars's conjunction through all 12 houses based on your rising sign, that's going to give you a really good idea of what kind of harmony or synthesis and where it's taking place in your birth chart and in your life, and the kinds of topics that you might be seeing woven together by Venus and Mars right now. So go back and check that out. Check it by your rising sign. I think you'll get something good out of that if you revisit it right now. Okay, that's what I've got for today. As always, if you have good stories, make sure you write #grabbed if you want us to possibly share it. We'll definitely have more of this coming in the weeks ahead as we start to aggregate and develop this offering. It's very new. So right now we're just in the kind of the trial phase. I'm going out of town to see my family for the first time in a long time. So some of these things are going to take a little bit, probably late July, early August, that we'll get started on some of the reports that you've shared and doing videos like that regularly. But we need to like have a backlog and sort of stockpile some of these stories first. So put #grabbed if you have a cool story to share about Venus, Mars, whatever house it's in or whatever you're noticing. Would love to hear from you guys. All right, that's what I've got. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.